Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. I must say it's quite inspiring to come and speak after you. I mean, we are indeed, I'll talk about forestry activities in Europe. And I must say indeed, we have maybe a tendency in Europe to see forests as certainly something productive, decorative, even recreative. And I think your presence here is a great reminder that forests are also a crucial habitat for communities like yours. So when it comes to EcoTree, I'll start with a few words about what it is we actually do, and then I'll specifically deep dive into one of our projects in France, in Europe. But the whole EcoTree story started with a big frustration, which was that why the hell we keep destroying nature at such an alarming rate, right? No one here hates nature. No one anywhere hates nature, though we keep with this dangerous nonsense. So the only reason we see is because there is a business case for nature to disappear. What I mean is that we've built a world, a model that simply allows nature to be destroyed as a sort of acceptable collateral damage, as something that comes with no cost. So the only way we can stop this nonsense is to instead create a business case for nature to be restored, preserved, right? And for nature to be valued. So our vision at EcoTree was to, inspired by actually the Nordic or the Scandinavian recycling system, which is a great way to monetize the return of bottles and cans. We've decided to apply the proven method of financial incentive to sustainable forestry. So we basically have created a model that enables individuals and companies to be financially rewarded for supporting and investing in nature. The way it works is we have this concept of tree ownership, where our customers, individuals or companies, buy newly planted trees from our project and become what we call a tree owner, meaning that they will get both very tangible environmental benefit and the perspective of a financial gain. We've been pretty successful over the last couple of years with this model, and from the very start, I think we've managed to see that it was among those environmental benefits. There was a strong focus on, indeed, tree planting and carbon sequestration, because trees and forests are very good at that. But we also realized that it is vital to turn those newly planted trees into healthy, durable ecosystems like this one. And so biodiversity preservation and focus on biodiversity should be at the core of any forestry activities, particularly in Europe. And as a reminder, one statistics says it all: 80% of land-living animal species live in forests. So the project, this is an example of one of the projects that we are running in France, next to one of our forests. And what we believe is the key success factor for a biodiversity preservation project is, first of all, to be hyper-local. There's no such thing as copy-paste. So what works in a place is not necessarily going to work in another place. So we leverage our own forestry experts' knowledge and expertise in-house, together with local partners, to basically design and then implement, and even first assess the biodiversity needs to make sure that we have a real positive impact on the local ecosystems. In terms of methodology, it sounds like logical when you say it this way, but unfortunately many initiatives are not necessarily following that path. It's vital to start with a baseline scenario, like assessing the starting point, where you're at when you start with a specific location, and then of course design, implement, and very importantly as well monitor what you're doing. And last but not least, it's also about communication and communicating properly about what you're doing, because there is so much, awareness these days about the environmental crisis. But how to fill the gap between awareness, good intentions, and tangible actions? And sharing what you do, and not just through sustainability ESG reports that no one reads, but actually quite tangibly, symbolically sometimes even, how to engage people or organization in supporting and caring for these type of projects. This is an example, don't have to read it all, but all the different items that we put into a project. And it starts, as I said, by, again, defining the baseline scenario, and that's quite some time, quite time and resource consuming to understand the starting point, and then try to be creative and, well, as biodiversity, be also very diverse in the type of local actions that we try to implement. It can be restoring, beehives to kind of increase the pollinator population. It can be restoring wetlands. So there are many ways, many triggers, buttons that you can actually activate in biodiversity preservation. And last but not least, always try to look at what type of impact you have on local ecosystems. It can be to restoring them, it can be to preserve them, it can be to increase their resilience. I mean, there are, again, a broad diversity of type of actions and possible outcomes on projects like the one we engaged in. As I said in my introduction, we've managed to crack a quite successful model of using financial incentive to get more people and companies engaged in tree planting and sustainable forestry. When it comes to specifically biodiversity, it's more challenging because, well, yeah, there's no, how can you value as a biodiversity impact or as a biodiversity gain? So far, we are still relying on private funding. So typically, the customers, again, either they are private persons like you and me, or organizations like the one we are working for, whether they support tree planting, then many of them also, on top of it, support and invest and financially fund biodiversity project. But this is clearly so far one of the challenges, to collect the funds and make sure they are properly used. This is an example of how basically the different pricing of such type of project costs. So again, quite a broad variety from smaller projects to more massive projects. And then it depends on basically the financial capabilities and the areas of interest of our partners and supporters. For example, an agroalimentary company or firm may be interested in the whole water flow or impact on water ecosystems, because it's part of what they're actually selling at the core of their business. So again, it's a broad area of panel of projects that we can, and funding that we request. And last but not least, it's quite vital to focus on the monitoring. I think there's so many initiatives happening in this field. Some are good, some are bad. Many have good intentions, but some are lacking some impact. So monitoring and transparency when it comes to monitoring is quite key. So we try to basically be as open and transparent as possible in this field. We try to open up what we're doing. We're happy that it's in the heart of France, as you could see, so it's fairly easy to engage local companies, schools, to show what we do. And that monitoring really goes from the very, almost molecular level, when we do like soil analysis, up to, of course, like an inventory of birds or deers and that. So from the micro or to the micro scale, it's important to try to develop a monitoring capability in all those fields. And especially, I would say, what's the invisible part, right? The microorganism. Let's not forget that in one big handful of forestry soil, there is more living organism than humans on Earth. So, that level of biodiversity is as critical as the birds and or the insects that you see and hear and feel around. And last but not least, I'd like to finish with this picture. Do you know what this is? Wild guess? Well, that one we know really well over there on your left. It's actually Mars. Right, and this is how Mars would look if it was hosting Earth's conditions. I'm not saying that we should terraform Mars. That's someone else is working on that. What I want to say here is that humanity, when we try to look back, has been really good throughout all our activities in turning a planet from that one to that one. So we'd like to use this as a reminder that maybe now it's time to revert that process and to indeed restore this unique setup of conditions that we have on this planet. And biodiversity and avoiding the biodiversity collapse should be on the very top of humanity's priority. Thank you very much, and happy to join you guys on the panel afterwards.